are the polls wrong again? Because they would have to be very wrong. They would have to be more wrong than 4 years ago. But you can't rule that out, can you?
That's right. 4 years ago, of course, the polls all said there was basically, I think one of them said there was a 98% chance that Hillary Clinton was going to be president. And of course, now in 2020, when people are looking at this, they're thinking, well, they were wrong in 2016. So what if they're wrong now? Now, this is the thing. In 2016, they were so wildly off that nobody trusts the polls today. But all the polls have the same message, which is that Biden has an overwhelming chance of winning. Now, there's only one thing that could change that I've seen so far, and that is this. The number of people who have been saying consistently that they haven't been telling anyone else that they want to vote Trump. Now, here's the thing. Everybody who wants to vote Biden is very, very open about the fact they go around in Biden-Harris masks. All over the country, you see people having Biden-Harris signs outside their homes. But what about the Trump voters? Trump voters, in my experience, in both Republican and Democrat areas, are very quiet about the fact that they want to vote for the president again. Voting Trump in recent years, despite the fact he won in 2016, has been seen as a deplorable, to use a famous term that Hillary Clinton used, a deplorable thing to do. So many people don't want to admit openly, or to their neighbors, even to their spouses, that they might be voting for the president. And that's the really big unknown and unknowable in this election. Will those people show up in sufficient numbers and give us all the biggest possible surprise?
Well, Joe from Atlanta, Georgia, which is one of the battleground states in this election, called earlier, Douglas, and he said, look, there's absolutely no way Trump can't win. Just look at the rallies. There's 40,000 people turning up to these rallies. Clearly, it's not proof, but there is enthusiasm for Trump on the ground.
That's right. Now, here is one of the other big variables. Trump, in traditional Trump manner, trolled Joe Biden in an expert manner yesterday by cutting and splicing the video of Trump arriving at one of his mega rallies by helicopter and Joe Biden arriving at one of his rallies yesterday in what is, by any analysis, a pitiful sight. He has a socially distanced audience who are all, several meters from each other, circled with a bit of chalk around their seat. I think there was a total of about 10 people. And of course, the Democrats are trying to pretend that means momentum. Well, here's the thing. COVID in the United States, even more than everywhere else, is seen through the Trump-Biden prism. Everything about it. Biden and his campaign, they always wear masks. Even their media, the MSNBC, they always appear in front of camera wearing a mask. The more pro-Trump media don't do that. And in the same way, the Trump campaign doesn't do that. Trump is saying to his voters, the virus isn't that important. He wants to beat it. He wants a vaccine and everything. But he's saying, look, I had it. Don't let it control our lives. We've got to get past this. We've got to get booming again. Vote for me, and that's what will happen. The flip side is that he and his campaign, of course, say Joe Biden, however, and the Democrats, broadly speaking, favor more lockdowns. If you look at the Democrat media, it's all about the number of people who've died in the last 24 hours, the number of people who've caught it. It's an ongoing ticker-tape death toll. And this is, in a way, the central thing that's coming out now, which is, yes, the president has this massive visible momentum, but that's because his supporters are coming out because he said to them, come out in large gatherings, albeit outside spaces. They're obeying that at least. But the Biden camp is, of course, portraying that as in some way irresponsible. We shouldn't be gathering together. We've got to think of COVID first and foremost. So again, that's one of the unknowables in this. Will the Biden supporters not just not turn out for the rallies, but have been scared to turn out for the polls? There are all of these variables in this election, even more than in any previous election here in the US.
Oh, indeed, there are. I guess two big factors that I see emerging. Number one, very positive economic figures out today. And if we go back to American elections in the past, it's the economy, stupid. The economy is rebounding. Then you also have something very underreported in the mainstream media, but it's certainly be going viral on social media. These gaffes from Joe Biden, Douglas. Yes, he's a nice man. He's got a great backstory, but there's a lot of people starting to question whether he actually has the mental capacity to take on this job at his age.
Well, this is neither Trump nor Biden are spring chickens. I think there's a big question as to why it is that American democracy, at this state where all these people in their 70s are competing for the top jobs. Here, however, is the problem for the Trump campaign in this. They talked up the Biden degeneration. They overdid it. Trump himself overdid it. Before the first debate, they told us, Biden's shot. He's not there. It's true. There are all of these gaffes that have happened. I don't think you like gaffes, but let's say just like mental fuzzes that occurred in Biden's head, things he said that just suggested rather worryingly he just wasn't on top of it. He's certainly not at the top of his game. However, the Republicans overdid this because actually, in the first debate and the second debate, Biden did sort of fine. Now, you could say that that interpretation comes because we were all primed by the Republicans to expect Joe Biden to have a win if he didn't just sort of drool on his shoes and ask which city he was in. So they shouldn't overdo that. Biden's been fine in the debates so far. Of course, that isn't by any means an enormous reason to vote for him. But as I said in the Spectator Diary, a certain portion of Americans clearly want to go back to what they think of as being normal.
Yeah.
Trump basically had two things he had to do. One of his advisors said this to me a long time ago. Trump had two things he had to do to get reelected this year. One of them was not to start any foreign wars. And the second one was to have the economy keep on booming. Of course, the economy in America, like everywhere else in the world, has been shut down for much of this year. Question is, will the voters see that that is the fault of a pandemic from China, which has affected every country in the world, and that their best chance of coming back and booming is with Donald Trump? Or will they simply think, look, I'm just not better off than I was 4 years ago. In fact, I'm not better off than I was a year ago. Will they see the job figures of recent months, and will they blame that on the president? These are the questions that will be going through the heads of the American people at the moment.
Douglas, final question. If Trump loses, does it all kick off on Wednesday? Is there civil unrest?
I don't think that the civil unrest, I think there's scenarios where civil unrest does kick off. I've seen a certain amount of it already on this trip. I saw a fair amount of it in Portland, Oregon, where so-called Antifa, so-called anti-fascists, who are actually fascists, were assailing a government facility that evening, as on most other evenings. My view is that if Biden wins, there will be a considerable number of Trump supporters, as there are with Biden supporters, who will be very suspicious of the claim that he's won. I think anything other than a clear landslide for either candidate is something like a disaster for the country. But I don't see the Trump supporters coming out on the streets primed as the other side supporters are. My own view is the most likely scenario in which ongoing and much more serious civil unrest occurs is if there is a Trump victory. There are millions of people in this country who have been primed by the Democratic Party to believe Trump didn't deserve to be elected in 2016, that he was somehow smuggled into the White House by Russian operatives. And they will be thinking the same thing this year in 2020. There are large cities in this country just waiting to go up in flames. There are many people on the so-called Antifa, BLM, radical left side who just cannot wait to burn their cities down. And that is, to my mind, the biggest threat this country faces. It's been kicking off every night, and I would have thought that a Trump re-election, whatever it means for the world, will mean some short-term pain for this country.